Thank you, Deputy Speaker. If there ever has been a more poorly considered project, I'm yet to discover what it is. Labor's plan to deliver the NBN that was developed on the back of a drinks coaster, indeed, has left this nation wondering truly what they were up to. They were very good at delivering fibre to the press release, Deputy Speaker, but unfortunately the connections that they made during their time in government left a lot of people wondering what it was all about. And indeed, the notion that you can have what Labor promised being absolutely a pipe dream, Deputy Speaker, and that you can't have high-quality cheap and build quickly at the same time, and that's effectively what Labor promised, is evidence of the complete inability of those on the other side to roll out what is one of the most complex and technically challenging projects that our nation has undertaken. And this is why, as a government, when we came to government, we recognised, like so many other jurisdictions around the world, a multi-mixed technology, a large country, that it simply was not feasible to deliver fibre to the premise to some of the communities. I know, Deputy Speaker, in your electorate, as in mine, it was simply inconceivable that they would be able to have fibre to the premise. So what we proposed was a multi-mixed technology, similar to what is available in other parts of the world, that is delivering the highest quality speeds, but also, importantly, Deputy Speaker, in a way that allowed regional and rural areas of Australia to be able to have access to fast and reliable broadband that had only previously been the privy of those living in inner cities around Australia, that already, Deputy Speaker, had quite reasonable ADSL coverage and speeds that were available to them. More's the pity for those communities that live in regional areas of Australia. They had been effectively, by Labor, left off the map. So one of the things on coming to government was to prioritise those areas of the country that had little or no access to fast data. And so 25 megabits down and 5 megabits up across the nation was, I guess, that was the base package which we are in the process of delivering. And it's quite interesting to note, Deputy Speaker, that in Tasmania, which is more advanced, it's true, in terms of the rollout of the NBN, despite the hiccups that occurred under those opposite, it's quite interesting if you look at the uptake of the speeds to those premises that do have access to fibre to the premise. It's quite interesting if you look at those that are choosing more than the base package of 25 down, 5 megabits per second up. In fact, there is less than 10% of those that have taken advantage of the connections that have chosen the 100 megabit per second 40 upload speeds. That is primarily going to be, of course, businesses, and indeed, Deputy Speaker, they pay for that privilege. The vast majority, in fact 86% of all of those that have connected to the fibre to the premise that is available around Tasmania have connected at 25.5 or indeed less. And it's quite interesting to note that in the trials that have been recently conducted in Queensland, and I'm very pleased to say also in my electorate of Lyons, the townships of Evandale, Western Junction and Breadalbin will be very soon connected to fibre to the nodes connections. And I note that the trials that have been completed recently in Queensland highlight speeds which are extraordinary and will provide speeds quite comparable to what is available to fibre to the premise users. And so it is, Deputy Speaker, that around the world this has been the experience previously, but those on the other side knew better. In the electorate of Lyons, which is a diverse rural and regional electorate, we also have large areas of the electorate that, again, were never, despite what you hear promised and despite what you hear from those opposite, we're never going to get connected by fibre to the premise. So large areas of my electorate are able to access very, very good speeds on the wireless service, Deputy Speaker. In fact, there are in the electorate of Lyons 17,523 premises that can access the NBN via the wireless service. The interesting thing, and I guess I would encourage, albeit that there are a number there that are still in build. There's about 2,000 of that 17,500 that are still in build, but those that are able to be that are able to connect via those wireless services, there is actually only around 4,500 people that have chosen to connect to the NBN that's been available. In some cases, since the middle of June 2013, as early as 2013, and I looked, for example, at the New Norfolk Tower, for example, that covers 432 premises. The activation take-up rate is, in fact, only 34%, Deputy Speaker. There are some that are better than others, but, for example, Lyle, again down in the Derwent Valley, 133 premises, of which only 23 have connected 17%. Some, of course, are higher than that. Indeed, the 41% of those on the Mount Direction Tower have connected 400 out of 444 connections. So the message, I guess, from the people of Lyons is that overwhelmingly the wireless connections have proved to be a very simple way of being able to connect to the NBN, that it's been quite a seamless process. It certainly hasn't involved the digging up of backyards, as has been the case in many of those communities, and a number of those communities in my electorate indeed were part of that early rollout under the former government in Deloraine, in Midway Point, parts of Sorrel, St Helens and indeed Triabunna. And look, the stories that we've had of backyards being dug up, of people that were making appointments and the appointments were cancelled, just shows the complexity of the build in that area, particularly in those remote and regional areas. So this is why I'm so pleased that, and I had the opportunity with the staff from NBN to go out and inspect, as I say, the first of the nodes that's been constructed in the township of Evandale, just outside of Launceston, and there's expected to be, if you could just bear with me, Deputy Speaker, there's expected to be 800 premises between Western Junction and Evandale that will be connected by May of this year to the fibre to the node technology, which, as I say, is delivering for a price, albeit, and those that wish to pay a higher price will be able to access speeds that on some of the trials have been approaching 100 download and 40 upload. So these are the sorts of speeds that are available on fibre to the premise, as similarly are available on fibre to the node. Of course, most households won't choose those speeds because a 25 down, 5 up service allows you to, for example, in most households, stream on Netflix or iView or SBS online up to 5 or 6 services at the one time. Now, you know, the social cost that brings in a family, Deputy Speaker, is for others to judge. But nevertheless, the technology of that speed allows more than what most households will require. So there is a lot of noise in this space. There's a lot of noise in this space, and indeed, if small businesses want faster speeds than that described, those will be available and they'll pay for it. But the truth of it is, in most areas in my electorate, the speeds available through wireless, through fibre to the node, and of course from the middle of this year, the satellite services. And many of those more remote areas of my electorate will be able to access through the 2 Skymuster satellites that have been launched and will be coming online in the middle of the year. For the first time, we'll be able to access fast broadband speeds that simply were a dream, that would have been a dream, as I say, under those opposites. So this is good news overwhelmingly for the people of my electorate. As I mentioned, there are a number of communities there that have access to fibre to the premise. Increasingly we'll see the rollout expanded very, very quickly in Evandale, in Exeter, Lenina and the communities down the West Tamar. We'll be able to soon be able to access fibre to the node services. I mentioned Gravelly Beach, Lenina, Rosevears, Swan Point, Blackwool, and of course Westbury and Hagley. And I note the disappointment of the Meander Valley Council. They recently had a report produced at their request, which cost them, I understand, somewhat over $10,000, which they requested that was passed by the council at the instigation of one of their councillors, and they were disappointed with the information that was provided. And you know, it's a question, I guess, for the ratepayers of the Meander Valley as to whether that was money well spent by their council, because they also very soon in Westbury and Hagley, 1,100 premises or thereabouts, be able to access through fibre to the node technology some of the fastest speeds that are available on the NBN. But as I go back to my original point, Deputy Speaker, of those premises that have had access to NBN for a large period of time, and in some cases since the middle of 2014, 86% of those retail customers are choosing speeds of 25.5 or lower, because they're getting good. They're able to do everything that they need to do with those sorts of speeds. For business, of course, it will be slightly different, and those faster speeds are going to be available through the mix of technologies that are being rolled out around the electorate of Lyons as we speak. So overwhelmingly, Deputy Speaker, it is a good story as far as the rollout of the NBN in my electorate, and as I say, I'm very pleased to see now that there are communities that we've almost completed the wireless rollout. There's only now 4,000 premises that are still in a build phase, and I note the Coles Bay East Tower, which had struck a planning hurdle with the tower being located in the National Park at Coles Bay. That's been overcome now, and so for the tourist town of Coles Bay, Freycinet, for those that might know that on the east coast of Tasmania, a very, very lovely part of our state in my electorate, those tourist operators will now be able to offer to the increasing numbers of mainland and international tourists that are coming to Tasmania to enjoy what we have to offer, speeds that they expect. So they're very happy about that. The fibre to the node rollout is commencing, as I mentioned, in those towns. Evandale and along the West Tamar will be the first, and not long after that, of course, you'll see a fibre to the node being rolled out in Westbury and Hagley in the Meander Valley. Of course, Bicheno on the east coast, Campbelltown, Dodgers Ferry in the southeast, a growing area of my electorate. Exeter, I mentioned. Longford, of course, is one of the major towns in the Northern Midlands. New Norfolk, certainly a large town there, and it will be a simple process. So, you know, people won't have to, as I say, have their backyards dig up, and certainly in the township of Evandale, where there are a lot of heritage houses, that's the last thing that they needed. So the simplicity of being able to connect to be able to access very, very fast speeds through fibre to the node is indeed welcomed, I think, by the overwhelming majority of the people in my electorate that previously haven't had access to really data connections anywhere approaching these speeds. And so regional Australia finally is being considered and has been made a priority for the rollout under this current government. Deputy Speaker, I thank the House for the opportunity to contribute on this debate.